Today, we are breaking down the quarterback rankings in redraft. We have already done tight ends. We have already done wide receivers. We have already done running backs. Today, we're going to break down our top 15 redraft quarterbacks. Way too early kind of addition, but there is best ball drafts going on right now, so definitely relevant at the moment. Let's start it off with QB1, Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, going off the board, kind of like mid-third or so of underdog drafts. I would say in redraft home leagues, he'll probably go a little earlier than that. Top 3 fantasy quarterback in 5 straight years. Believe it or not, last year's 22.7 points per game is actually his worst season since 2020. And that's still like majorly league winning quarterback stuff. So first year under 4,000 passing yards and second year under 30 passing touchdowns is not something I really expect to see very often out of Josh Allen, even though he won the MVP. Projection still elite. The receiving weapons, not excellent with Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman and Josh Palmer and Elijah Moore, but James Cook and the 2 tight ends can contribute out of the that position group as well. But he's Josh Allen, man. 500 to 700 rushing yards, 10 plus touchdowns on the ground, in addition to what he's going to give you through the air, which is like 4,030 touchdowns. And of course, he has the upside, as good as he is, to spike a random 40 touchdown, 15 touchdown on the ground type of season.
There's a reason why this guy goes in the first 3 rounds of ADP. Everybody and their mother would prefer to take a late quarterback. They preach every year, oh yeah, I'm going to wait on quarterback. But when you're sticking down the barrel of Josh Allen, a legitimate positional advantage there at the tail end of the 3rd round, it's tough to pass, man. It really is. What he is able to do both from a passing and a ground game perspective is unlike any quarterback in the league, because we'll talk about these next 2 quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, what they're able to do from a rushing perspective. We can both agree that their passing ceiling is not near what Josh Allen has shown.
Yeah. I mean, Lamar's was in 2024.
Efficiency-wise.
Yeah, QB1 in points per game this past year with 25.6, so a monster performance this season. The highest weekly ceiling of any fantasy quarterback, and I don't even think it's particularly close, man. The guy puts up 40 burgers like it's nothing.
Yeah, absolute monster. And I mentioned passing ceiling in relation to yards plus touchdowns, because you can make the case, like I said, 2 separate years for Lamar Jackson has actually had an elite touchdown percentage. Let's contextualize this right now. We'll talk about Joe Burrow. We'll talk about the overall attempts that he has. 650 pass attempts last year, 43 passing touchdowns. Yes, we know the Bengals will throw the football. Contextualize this. The Ravens threw the ball, 500 times last year? Did they even hit 500?
I mean, probably barely if they did.
And Lamar Jackson had 41 touchdowns. So that means he threw the ball at least 150 times less than Joe Burrow and had 2 less passing touchdowns.
Yeah, no, he's a beast, man. He has an elite offensive line, unstoppable ground attack with Derrick Henry to help move the offense. Lamar Jackson blends that steady passing floor and, obviously the upside on a weekly basis with 50-plus rushing yards per game. And, he doesn't even run for a lot of touchdowns, too, especially with Derrick Henry there. But who knows, man? Derrick Henry, for whatever reason, runs cold on touchdowns, and Lamar runs hot on touchdowns. Guy's an elite Konami code quarterback, best skill set of players, really, that he's had in his career.
If only he had the tush push.
Yeah, if only he had the tush push. Between Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely, I feel like this is the 7th straight year of us saying that he's had the best passing weapons of his career. But realistically, last year, they actually all performed at a pretty high level. Flowers was really good. Obviously, Derrick Henry was awesome out of the running back position. Rashad Bateman had a nice season. Andrews scores 11 touchdowns. Isaiah Likely had his moments. So nothing really is going to change here. Let's move into Jalen Hurts, who... tush push merchant himself. He has a 51.1 ADP. I think it'll probably start to rise a little bit because that was with the concern that maybe the tush push would go away, which looks like it's going to stay. 4 straight 21 plus point per game seasons. That should remain intact. Does not have the elite passing volume that Josh Allen has or that Lamar Jackson has, but he does have 600 plus rushing yards and 10 plus touchdowns. And honestly, lately it's been like 13 plus touchdowns on the ground. And he gives you that high weekly floor ceiling combination. And with the Eagles' weapons, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, top 3, probably top 2 wide receiver duo in the league. And Goddard is a capable tight end. And of course, Saquon and the elite offensive line help move the offense. There's nothing to add about Jalen Hurts except, okay, do I want to take a 2nd or a 3rd round quarterback in all these guys, or do I want to wait till later? And the reality is, if you feel like the quarterback position is going to slide in general across the board, then maybe you wait for a different falling value.
Yeah, like his passing projection isn't where Lamar's isn't where Josh Allen's is. But the fact of the matter, when you have the most unstoppable play in sports and Saquon Barkley gets tackled on the 1 yard line 11 separate times, you're going to be a very valuable fantasy football quarterback. And the fact that that was his, I believe, this past year, least points per game this past year in the last 4.
Yep.
And he was still a top 4 level week-to-week option. Goes to show you, again, there are concerns. The passing volume is the lowest in the league. In fact, it's one of the historically low passing volumes in the league. Or, in league history, I mean. But the fact of the matter is, if you're getting 10-plus rushing touchdowns, 600-plus rushing yards, even if he only throws 21 touchdowns, it'll play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then on the off chance that for whatever reason they throw more, Saquon goes down or something like that, there's a very good chance that Jalen Hurts can still re-access that 25-point per game ceiling that we saw from him in his breakout season. So speaking of breakout seasons, let's talk about Jayden Daniels, who finds himself, he is going higher than Jalen Hurts in ADP right now, going about 8 picks higher or so, but a early 4th round pick versus about a 4 or 5 turn pick, give or take, for Jalen Hurts. But finished as a top 5 quarterback as a rookie, 21.5 points per game, and he led the Commanders to the NFC title game.
Yeah, and this is a team that invested back into him this offseason. We see, for example, them trading for a weapon with Deebo Samuel, them shoring up the offensive line, go in the trade market, get Laramie Tunsil, go in the first round of this draft, get Josh Connolly from Oregon. Like, they solved their bookend tackles and got a receiver that peaked as a second-team All-Pro. Now, I'm not saying Deebo Samuel is still an All-Pro caliber player. It's clear that whether it's injuries, whether it's just decline as a player, he's not where he was back in 2021. But is he a damn solid number 2 type of weapon, especially in the context of what Jayden Daniels had to work with last year? You know, Zach Ertz was his second hyper target last year.
Olamide Zaccheaus was his second best receiver.
Noah Brown was a reliable option in their receiving core on a week-to-week basis. Like, they didn't have a Deebo Samuel where if Terry McLaurin was scripted out of the games, they didn't have a guy that they can throw to in the flats and get you 8 yards after the catch. They didn't have a guy that can take a drag route to the house. Deebo Samuel, despite the injury woes, is still able to do that. And Jayden Daniels, as we know, is already one of the most dynamic rushers at the quarterback position. With these additions, with him potentially even getting better in year 2, like, the reason why he goes above Hurts is because people can envision him taking a Lamar Jackson level step, can envision him being the MVP in 2025. I feel like that's why people are very optimistic on Daniels, seeing a first-year quarterback, thinking what the upside could be in year 2. And that's for better or worse, because, for example, people did that with CJ Stroud last year. Didn't really end up materializing. Again, I feel a lot more comfortable projecting Jayden Daniels this year than I did Stroud last year, just simply off of the Konami factor. But specifically in regards to him versus Hurts, the 9-pick discrepancy in ADP, when we've seen Hurts do it for 4 years, when we see and know Hurts has one of the best situations in the NFL with the Eagles, I disagree with the market here.
Yeah, I do too. I think Jalen Hurts, whether you think Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback or not, I think both of us think that Jayden Daniels probably is a better quarterback even already at this point in his career. Hurts' rushing floor, because of the touchdowns and the tush push and those, plays that he gets 12 plus rushing touchdowns a year, just follow the fantasy points, man. It's really hard not to just like Jalen Hurts a little bit better for that reason. So quarterback 5 in our rankings here is Joe Burrow, who goes right around where Jalen Hurts goes, just a little bit after at 54.1 ADP. The passing projection at quarterback is bar none in the NFL.
I don't think it's close because when you combine the volume, the efficiency, the touchdown equity, the yardage totals, the bad defense, the amount of plays they're going to run, like 66% neutral pass rate, like there's no passing projection like Joe Burrow this year. And in fact, if you're in a 6-point passing touchdown league, you can make the case the gap's a lot closer between him and the 4.
Yeah, no, for sure. 45 touchdowns last year, 5K yards through the air. He still has Jamar Chase. He still has T. Higgins. We'll see what ancillary receivers, kind of emerge. I can't expect much out of Jermaine Burton or Yoshi Voss or Mike Gesicki and Chase Brown out of the backfield as a receiver, but no team passed at a higher rate in neutral scripts, like you said. So, Burrow, those peak Patrick Mahomes years where we were just projecting him for 40 touchdowns and 5,000 yards? That's what we're getting out of Joe Burrow now.
Exactly. And it's like, okay, well, Mahomes, had Tyreek Hill, had Travis Kelce. Well, guess what? Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins.
Exactly. So let's move into QB6, which I swear this is not total homerism. And there's a large gap in ADP between Burrow and the next quarterbacks off the board. It's about a 35 pick discrepancy. Yeah. So we're talking like 3-round difference.
Which in the context of best ball specifically would make sense because of where T. Higgins and Chase go. And I understand, but from a redraft perspective, like you could make the case would I rather Baker Mayfield at 91 and a receiver or running back at 54, or would I rather Joe Burrow at 54 and the receiver or running back at 91? And I would tend to lean the former, because even though we just made the case for how stone cold, how locked in the projection is for Burrow, I mean, Baker Mayfield just threw 41 touchdowns.
Yeah, and both of them were just as good as each other last year. 22.5 PPR points per game. Shout out to the receptions that they had. 44 total touchdowns. Nearly 400 rushing yards, too. That was a career high for Baker Mayfield. He actually gave you a nice little 4-touchdown, 400 rushing yard season, which we weren't really expecting. Completed 71.4% of his passes as well. An embarrassment of riches between a top 3 to 5 O-line. Like, I think other than the Eagles and Lions, maybe the Bucs O-line is like
It's
right up there.
sure.
It's like one of the best in the league. The best 1 through 4 wide receiver quartet in football. You have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, the first round pick, Jalen McMillan, who had 7 or 8 touchdowns down the stretch last year, and a top 5 duo of running backs, like between Bucky Irving and White. Like, they're up there as a duo for sure. And both of them are very good receivers. And those points go to Baker Mayfield as well. The only worry that you could have here is Baker Mayfield has never done this before up until this year, and Liam Cohen leaving. And as I've made reference to before, the Bucs promoted Josh Grizzard in-house, who called the plays on third down last year, a third down offense that was number 1 in the NFL. I think that Liam Cohen will factor more into the run game, which will in turn affect the overall offense in general. But I do think it's possible that, like, Liam, we were like 19th in pass rate last year. Like, it's possible that we throw the ball more with this stack of wide receivers and our third down pass game coordinator now calling the plays. Yeah. It's possible we throw the ball more.
Yeah. And again, like, I'm a little bit more concerned about Liam Cohen factor, but like you said, the fact that the third down play caller, that the pass game coordinator is the one that takes over, like, I think more of the concerns should be stemmed with the run game.
Yeah, for sure. And like Baker, even if you lose like, I think it also is insulated that if Chris Godwin isn't healthy right away, that you still have Emeka Egbuka and Jalen McMillan. Like last year when Mike Evans and Godwin were hurt, Baker Mayfield was performing as a top quarterback with Cade Otton as his number 1 receiver.
Yeah, no, we saw it regardless whether Evans and Godwin were in or out of the lineup, whether it's Cade Otton leading the show, Jalen McMillan scoring touchdowns at will down the stretch. Bucky Irving, Rachaad White out of the backfield getting force-fed 8-9 targets in any given week. I mean, Rachaad White had a week where he had like 13, it felt like. Yeah. Like, you guys have answers to the personnel losses. And I think this is why Mayfield's so intriguing this year, is that you feel like the floor of this offense is intact because we saw so many different ways that they could beat you last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel pretty safe about Baker. I realize that people might have a hard time clicking him because relative talent-wise to the rest of the quarterbacks in this range, like Patrick Mahomes is the next name that we have off the list. Like, obviously,
no, Baker over Patrick Mahomes.
He's not as good as Patrick Mahomes, but he absolutely wiped the floor with him in fantasy production last year. Like, it wasn't even particularly close, and it's because of the offense, the way that it operates. The Baker's playing with confidence too. He loves the situation, loves Tampa Bay. So let's talk about Mahomes, who's quarterback 7 right now for us. Man. He is very tricky because at 84 overall ADP. You could argue that is 100% driven by name value because last year he would be a double-digit round pick with ease if we were just drafting the quarterback we got last year.
Yeah, and again, he's turning a weird corner where he hasn't been a high-end quarterback option in fantasy since 2022, and the passing numbers have gone down the older he's gotten. Like, typically you'll see, maybe younger quarterbacks come onto the scene, they're more rushing threats, but their passing games aren't fully developed, and as they get older, they usually see the pass game develop. Like, Dak's a great example of that, for example, where the older he's gotten, the pass game's developed. Mahomes came onto the scene as a first-year starter and threw 50 fucking touchdowns. And now as he's older, as he's gotten better mentally, maybe he isn't as physically intact as he was when he was 24 years old, like he's going to be 30. You would expect the passing projection to be at its best, but maybe part of it's, Kelsey getting banged up or getting worse down those last couple years. I think it's
just the way the teams play Kansas City.
The defense has been very good. Teams obviously with the too high shell. However, I will say, this is a question we need answered. Can he get back to that 2022, 2021, 2020, 2018 level form, making him the best quarterback on the planet? That's the question. Because if he isn't, he only averaged 18.3 points per game. He was only the quarterback 13 in points per game last year. That will not do it. If you are drafting him at 84 overall and he gives you another quarterback 13, 18.3 points per game, that will not cut it. However, what we are banking on, weak running back rotation. Isaiah Pacheco got hurt last year. Kareem Hunt was uninspiring. Yeah, sure. They add Elijah Mitchell and Brashard Smith in the draft. Like, they have a weak running back rotation, at least based on our expectations going into last year. We thought Pacheco could be a riser, and unfortunately, that just simply wasn't end up the case. Even after he returned from injury, he was splitting time with Kareem Hunt. If they do end up, whether it's Rashid Rice being healthy starting the year, whether it's, maybe like I said, Xavier Worthy taking the next step, Marquise Brown being healthy, if they do end up relying more on the pass game and end up relying on the best quarterback on the planet, carrying them through passing production yet again, it feels tough to avoid a guy that can be the potential GOAT when his career is done. So I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. Quarterback 7 feels like if he does get back to the level we've seen in the past, the cheapest we will ever get Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, especially when you factor in all that went wrong last year. Rice going down, Marquise Brown going down. Worthy was a rookie, didn't look like a functional NFL receiver until like week 10.
Yeah.
Kelsey obviously maybe was dealing with some stuff. I'm not exactly sure last year. And then like you said, Pacheco went down for the year as well for the most part. So if you bet on Mahomes right now, it's a bet that he gets back to old Patrick Mahomes because anything less than 20 points per game when you're drafting a top 8 quarterback is a failure. Like any quarterback that you spend top 8 overall positional ADP on has to be an every week set it and forget it starter. It's not negotiable. If they're not, look at, people who drafted CJ Stroud or whatever last year. Like you were streaming quarterback by like week 3, week 4. It's like you just wasted a 5th round pick.
Yeah, exactly. But we can move on to quarterback 8. Guy going 11 picks after Patrick Mahomes, a guy that is another polarizing figure because as bad as he's appeared to be in the last 2 years and as bad as he is in the eyes of the fantasy market, he was still quarterback 12 in points per game last year.
Yeah, and he's never not been a quarterback 1 in his entire career. With Marvin Harrison entering year 2.
Kyler Murray, by the way.
Yes, Kyler Murray. McBride entering, year 4 of his career, a fixture in the system already, and a duo of capable backs between James Conner and Trey Benson, plus an improving offensive line. It was a very young unit the last couple of years. Kyler Murray's a solid option, man. He's definitely a better and best ball quarterback, 100%, because he has the weekly ceiling that you want, but he is a little bit frustrating from an every week starter standpoint in a managed redraft league where maybe you'd want another, quarterback to balance with him and play matchups and that kind of thing. But I mean, QB1 territory is QB1 territory because he was literally the definition of a boomer bust. He was either a QB1 in fantasy last year on the week, or he was not a QB1 in fantasy. It was half of his games were each. So if he gets back to pre-ACL tear running, and last year we saw him do that, 600 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns, maybe he can amp that up to 750 and 8 or something like that. You just got to see the passing numbers get a little bit better because it's been a long time since really like 2020, his second year, that we've seen him be like a 23, 24 point per game scorer. And the reason he was that good that year is because DeAndre Hopkins was like an all-pro receiver and he had some ancillary players to throw the football to. Whereas now it's like you need Harrison to take that step. You need McBride to be an absolute dog because he needs more of a passing ceiling than he's had. And I really wish the Cardinals had added another receiver in the draft or something because right now it is just basically Harrison and McBride still.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you with Kyler. I think if you're getting him as a back and quarterback 1, he's one of the few quarterbacks on a week in, week out basis, given the rushing ceiling, that can combat some of the best guys in fantasy. Again, we'll see if he can get back to that level of rushing because to fully get back to the quarterback 3, quarterback 4 in points per game across a year, he needs to rush more even than he did last year. He needs to get back to 800 yards, 8 plus touchdowns.
And he hasn't done that since his second year and his third year when he was fully healthy. And maybe the ACL tear took something out of him and he's trying to be a little bit more cerebral or whatever. But I think he probably knows that like the Cardinals kind of need to see it from him because it's been, okay, you were coming off the injury. We're giving you some time. You got a young receiver. This is the year. Arizona's got to have a top 12 offense.
Yeah, and we can move on to quarterback 9, 118.4 off the board in terms of ADP. I mean, it's no shocker. If you guys are following the channel, you mentioned your guy with Baker Mayfield. My guy here, Dak Prescott. And you actually also have Dak Prescott around this range too. So it's not like I'm just homer. Oh, yeah, I have him quarterback 5.
I have him 10.
Yeah. It's not like I had him quarterback 5 and you had him 14. He ended up 9 in consensus. It's not like we both have him in that 9-10 range. It's pretty simple with Dak. Again, he is another year older with another injury. You can make the case as a negative that that's a concern that he's returning after another season and injury. Obviously, the hamstring this past year. A couple years ago, we saw the finger that he broke actually at the Sunday Night Football game we were at. Obviously, a couple years ago with the dislocated ankle in 2020. He's had his fair share of injuries. But what is undeniable is that when he is healthy, he has the opportunity to win you leagues at this point of the ADP. If you can have him in the quarterback 9, 10, 11, 12, again, he's like the quarterback 16 on Underdog as well. If you're getting him even outside of quarterback 1 range, he finished second in MVP voting and was the quarterback 4 in points per game in 2023. And in his last 2 fully healthy seasons, he's scored 20.7 points per game and 20.7 points per game. We're getting a 20-plus point per game scorer, and they go out there this offseason. The last time we actually saw him with a full function number 2, again, keep in mind, second MVP voting, quarterback of 4 in points per game in 2023, and specifically in regards to the weapons he has. Like I said, in 2023, he finished second in MVP voting, quarterback 4 in points per game. That was only really with CeeDee Lamb. The last time he's had a bona fide number 2 wide receiver like George Pickens was in 2021, where he scored 20.7 points per game. The Cowboys, they've patched their offensive line with a ton of resources. 80% of their current offensive line has been drafted since 2022, and I think the additions of Pickens cannot be understated. The Cowboys have needed somebody that can win on the outside at a high level next to CeeDee Lamb in the last couple of years that they simply have not had. Whether it was Jalen Tolbert being miscast, whether it was a couple times in the last couple of years. For example, there was a T.Y. Hilton stretch a couple years ago in 2023. We had to sign T.Y. Hilton off the street, and he made a game-winning play against the Philadelphia Eagles in like week 12 of a consequential game.
That sounds like a Mandela effect. I don't even remember that.
The Cowboys haven't had a consistent number 2 since Michael Gallup tore his ACL and since Amari Cooper left in that trade to the Cleveland Browns. I think this offense profiles a lot better or a lot closer to 2021 than it does in this past year. And if Dak does stay healthy, if Dak does play all 17 games or at least 15 plus games, cut and dry, outside of Joe Burrow, outside of maybe 3 quarterbacks on planet Earth, there are not many else other than Dak that I can say project for 35 plus touchdowns and 4,500 plus yards. And Baker Mayfield's another one of them.
There you go. I let you do your diatribe on Dak. I agree with everything he said. I'll just save some time there because I feel like we went like 10 minutes on Dak Prescott why he can be a 30-point per game guy or a 30 passing touchdown guy. Anyways, Bo Nix, I actually do have above Dak Prescott, and mainly
reasonable.
The reason for that is he was QB8 in his rookie year, and he added a nice rushing floor, which Dak does not have, with 430 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, along with a 29 touchdown passing ceiling with 3,800 yards as well. And it's not like he has like great weapons now, but he also had worse weapons last year. Like he had no run game whatsoever. That should improve with RJ Harvey coming in. And despite not really adding any wide receiver help, like I really thought they were going to be aggressive, add a Matthew Golden, add somebody like that in the draft. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Pat Bryant, who they drafted in the 3rd round, Vele, Ingram, Franklin, all those guys. Plus, he has more experience in the system. He's playing with, working with Sean Payton for another year. They were an up-tempo offense, and they were a top 8 unit in neutral script pace of play. So I think what you're getting out of Bo Nix is, that like 30 touchdown, 4,000 yard season that he had last year, maybe that continues. And, 450, 500 yards, a couple of touchdowns on the ground. That's a good late round quarterback projection. Now, he's going 99.4 in ADP, but I can't imagine in home redraft leagues he would go that high. So, if you can get him in the 10th, 11th, 12th round and you're going to punt quarterback, again, it's so hard to click the button on, even Joe Burrow. As much as I love Joe Burrow, it's hard to click the button on Joe Burrow in like the end of the 4th round when I can draft Dak or Bo Nix in the 10th or the 11th round.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes to for me, because you mentioned we had Dak at 9. We have Nix at 10 in terms of our consensus. I believe we just literally have them flopped or no. Okay, the difference is I have Dak at 9. You have him at 10. But I have Bo Nix after these next couple of guys, which we'll talk about again. Very, very thin lines. If you want to take the sure thing projection with Bo Nix, I do not blame you. But I'm willing to be all in on the upside of 2 of the best quarterback prospects that I have evaluated. One of them, coming in here at quarterback 11 consensus, we have Drake Maye of the New England Patriots, 124.4 ADP, and he already played like a fantasy quarterback 1 as a rookie.
Yeah, with absolutely no wide receivers. The 31st ranked pass blocking offensive line, and they were 32nd in run blocking. So we're talking the worst line in the league. A running back, in Ramondre Stevenson, who was sub 4 yards per carry. A coach that got fired after 1 year. He had 19.78 points per game in the games that he started. With all of that shit going wrong. Like, how many times we make excuses for quarterbacks, and we'll make excuses for one of them in a second here. Drake Maye had every reason not to be a productive fantasy quarterback last year, and he still was. And you know why? Because he averaged 32.4 rushing yards per game, 36 in the games that he finished. And now he has better coaching with Josh McDaniels, who's a functional play caller. He has better coaching with Mike Vrabel. He has Stephon Diggs, who doesn't even have a knee brace on in practice, which is wild to me, who looks like he's going to be at least a functional starting alpha receiver for him. Definitely a major upgrade to what he had last year. Kyle Williams, who they drafted in the 3rd round, you and I both had, I believe, his top 10 receiver in the class. And they draft an offensive tackle and Will Campbell at 4th overall. They bring in Morgan Moses in free agency to play right tackle. Their tackles were the problem. Their interior offensive line is not that bad. Their tackles were the problem. And Drake Maye being a guy that you can essentially punt quarterback into oblivion and get at quarterback 17, quarterback 16, quarterback 18. Dude, home redraft leagues, you might get him like quarterback 22.
Dude, I've heard Mason saying that he's not even a starting caliber quarterback in fantasy. Like, he wouldn't start him in his lineup.
And, like, are you going to have
I was starting him at points in the Flock League last year, and he got way better.
Exactly. If you're going to have a weaker starting quarterback spot, you're probably going to be strong everywhere else. And he might give you, like, this is no exaggeration, no hyperbole, because he already did this last year. 19.78 points in the games that he finished with no weapons, no line, no coaching. That's better than what Mahomes gave you last year.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, shout out Mason. He knows I'm just picking his hair there because we've argued about Maye on numerous occasions, but we are May-pilled on this channel. And speaking of being pilled of a highly talented prospect, a guy that we had comped on the spectrum of a Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray franchise quarterback that went 1st overall last year. Look, I understand that it was a season of ups and downs for Caleb as a rookie, but objectively, when we're looking at the year, like, he only turned the ball over 8 total times, fumbles plus interceptions. Yeah, sure, he struggled on a week-to-week basis. It didn't look clean at all times. But at the end of the day, he wasn't as mistake-prone as people kind of made him out to be. And now, this is a vote of confidence. He gets Ben Johnson over. He accepts the offensive or head coaching position after being the offense coordinator with the Lions. I've already talked about the advantages that the Lions scheme has presented. If you guys saw the running back video, the wide receiver video, Ben Johnson, to me, is probably the single best offensive mind in the league. And I would argue when you combine the weapons core, the head coach, and the improvements of the offensive line, as long as Caleb Williams is the caliber of talent that I thought he was when I evaluated him, we're looking at a legit league-breaking level ceiling. Let's just paint the picture. If you took a top 15-ish level NFL quarterback, even if you put in like Jared Goff, or if you put in like somebody in that range of quarterback play, in this current Bears team, with the current offensive line that they have, with the weapons core that they have, with Ben Johnson, where would we be drafting them in fantasy?
We'd probably be drafting, let's say Geno Smith or Jared Goff or some quarterback in that range. We'd probably be drafting them about where we're drafting Caleb Williams.
I would argue we'd be drafting him up where Baker Mayfield's going.
I disagree, because I think part of why you draft Caleb Williams as like a borderline top 100 pick is because he also ran the ball a decent amount as well. And he has, of course, we haven't detailed exactly yet, but he has Rome Odunze, he has DJ Moore, he has Luther Burden. They drafted Colson Loveland. DeAndre Swift can catch the football. Cole Kmet's a reasonable contributor. So, again, I don't have Caleb Williams this high. I have him like quarterback 14 or 15. And it's mainly just because I don't really need to draft him, because I believe in the other guys who have, I think, very similar ceilings. But in a managed redraft league, for what it's worth, if you wanted to draft Caleb Williams, let's say with your 9th round pick, and you could just take, let's say, Jordan Love in the 12th round to kind of back him up. Maybe first couple games of the season, you play Jordan Love, Dak, whatever. You play some other quarterback for the first couple games of the season, but then you see Caleb Williams is going off on your bench or whatever. Then you drop the other quarterback, maybe trade him in a package deal or something. That's when I like Caleb Williams. I think my problem with Caleb Williams becomes taking him in like best ball formats where there's no waiver pickups, there's no streaming quarterbacks, there's no trading for quarterbacks. That's my only hang up with him. But in a managed redraft league, I would probably bump him up a couple spots higher than I would in best ball.
You see, I don't mind taking him high in best ball, because if you take Caleb Williams, he's going to be a 3-quarterback build, and the assortment of weapons is going to lead to spike rates.
I don't think a top 100 quarterback necessarily should be a 3-quarterback build, and I think part of the reason he goes that high is for stacking purposes. I don't think it's necessarily because people believe in Caleb Williams that much.
Yeah, because we've had these arguments of like, where do we value DJ Moore? Where do we value Roman Dunze? Where do we value Colson Loveland, Cole Kmet? Like, where do we value all these Bears?
Get the syrup, not the pancakes.
Exactly. Get the guy that makes everything work around them, and that's Caleb. If Caleb Williams does end up being that first overall pick caliber player that we both thought he was, like we're talking about a guy we're drafting as the quarterback 4 or 5 off the board next year.
No, absolutely. And I think he underratedly can run for like 500 yards and 5 touchdowns too, which is probably something that we definitely should have mentioned off the top. But yeah, he's an interesting player. Again, I frankly think that he'll go a little bit overdrafted in some people's leagues because of the weapons core and whatnot and the hype that he has around him. But yeah, he's a good player. Hey. He's got a fine projectable 10th, 11th round kind of pick is what I would spend on him. But on Underdog, he goes in like the 8th round. So to me, it's just too early.
Final note, least surprising thing that the guy who has him in first round of Dynasty startups is going to have him a little bit higher in redraft as well. Yeah,
of course. Everyone expected Danny to be glazing Caleb here. So let's get into Jordan Love, who I have ranked straight up over Caleb and goes 20, 30 picks after him. Jordan Love, 128th overall ADP right now. Lots of poor runouts for Jordan Love last year between him getting hurt in week 1 versus Philadelphia and Brazil, missing time for a couple weeks there. He was banged up all year because he kind of rushed back from that injury. Number 2, the pass volume went down from 34 pass attempts per game in 2023 when Jordan Love was a top 5 quarterback in fantasy to 28 per game. Part of that is probably because they didn't want him dropping back too much because he was injured and that kind of thing. Number 3, none of the so-called young, talented quartet of wide receivers that they had emerged. We thought somebody, Jayden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, one of these, Dontavian Wicks had truthers. One of these guys was going to become a guy, and none of them did.
They were all so good that they drafted one in the first round this year.
Exactly. And his rushing regresses from 250 and 4 in 2023 to 83 yards and 1. Again, probably for health reasons. He wasn't running very much. This year, stay on the field. Stay healthy. The addition of Matthew Golden in the first round is going to stretch the field. Jordan Love has a nice deep ball. He can throw to a 4.29 receiver. Jayden Reed's back healthy. Doubs and Wicks are there. Of course, Christian Watson will be probably out for most of the year. And then Tucker Kraft, who we talked about as the tight end in the tight end video, he could definitely do some damage as well. Nothing really changed from 2023 to now. Nothing's changed. If anything, it's better because they have Matthew Golden and they have some of these young receivers who have more, under their belt. So I think this is a guy that you punt quarterback, you don't draft him until the 12th, 13th round, and you might have an every week starter on your hands. Like, this is how good I think Jordan Love can end up being. He can be a 20 to 22 point per game guy who you did not have to spend nearly like Burrow, Mayfield, Mahomes projection of pick on.
Yeah, I agree with you with Jordan Love. I think it was a poor run out last year, but there's a lot more meat left on the bone like we saw in 2023, especially in the context that this is by far a better weapons group than he had in that season, quite famously when they upset the Cowboys in Dallas.
Yeah, and another guy that Danny is definitely high on is Trevor Lawrence, who is quarterback 14 in our rankings here. I mean, it's the similar case to Caleb. I mean, you're betting
almost the exact one.
You're betting on the guy who was the first overall pick finally looking like he's the first overall pick.
Yeah, and let me just simplify it like this. Like you said, very similar case to Caleb. We trust Ben Johnson. We trust Liam Cohn. We trust an elite injection of playmaking talent to their teams. Obviously, Colson Loveland and Luther Burden for the Chicago Bears. And Travis fucking Hunter for the Jacksonville
Don't forget De'Ami Brown.
Hey, De'Ami Brown, we got to give him his flowers. And Bashal Tootin for what it's worth. Maybe some dynamism, explosive plays out of the backfield. Regardless, though, the main piece, future gold jacket player, best player in this class, Travis Hunter. Hey, for those of you that commented on the last few videos, you guys glazed Travis Hunter too much.
It is him mainly.
Buddy, I ain't overglazing prime OBJ because that's exactly what we got here. I ain't overglazing this guy. In fact, when he's wearing a gold jacket in 15 years, I expect apologies because, Travis Hunter is different gravy, dude. And adding him to this offense, injecting that type of dynamic impact into your receiving game, outside of BTJ, they didn't have dynamism in their receiving core. Like Christian Kirk, I'm sorry, he's fucking oatmeal.
I love me some Christian Kirk, but yeah,
you like him, but he's oatmeal.
Ain't Travis Hunter.
He's oatmeal. Travis Hunter is creme fucking brulee, man. Like you're getting the whole thing here. Think of, like I mentioned with BTJ, 2023 LSU level impact. BTJ is, of course, BTJ. Travis Hunter, who is he?
Travis Hunter.
Malik Neighbors.
Oh, okay.
But close enough. Travis Hunter, Malik Neighbors, Travis Hunter. They're going to be two peas in a pod after we look at them after just how dominant they are this year.
Yeah, and of course, this is all predicated on Liam Cohn being a good coach and Trevor Lawrence taking a step forward and whatnot, but I think there's enough here that they don't have any excuses. It wouldn't shock me if the Jags were kind of bad this year. still, even despite
They'll
all this.
find a way. They're the Jags.
They're the Jags. Like, they'll find a way. But regardless, I mean, you're taking the strategy, and in managed redraft leagues where you could just drop a bad quarterback and pick up a different quarterback, it is the correct strategy for what it's worth.
Taking
Caleb
upside.
Williams, Trevor Lawrence, these guys may be just easy upside projections. If they hit, they're every week starters. I guess my point would be that I think that like a Jordan Love or a Drake Maye, who I have ranked ahead of Caleb Williams, they're also high upside guys. So it's not like I'm taking, it's not like I'm saying to take Jared Goff or Brock Purdy over Caleb Williams.
I'll give Purdy some credit. I have him a little bit higher than you do, specifically over the guy that we have at 15 here, just because I think there is more upside for Purdy than people like to let. Like, people paint Purdy as like, oh yeah, he's a fucking, he just sits in the pocket and does what fucking Kyle Shanahan said. Like, Purdy actually has a lot more out of structure ability than people give him credit for. So shout out Dylan if you're watching. Had to gas Brock Purdy. He actually would have made this list if it was mine.
Yeah, and the reason he didn't make this list is because I still think that CJ Stroud's got the rookie year CJ in him. And he's a young quarterback. He's got a top 17 season in the bank already from his rookie season. Last year, his numbers declined, but you got to think about what happened. Tank Dell was bad, got hurt. Stephon Diggs played, 7 games, got hurt. Nico Collins banged up for most of the time Stephon Diggs was healthy. So you didn't have your weapons core intact. You also had pretty bad protection. It really declined from about middle of the pack to the number 36 quarterback in terms of a protection rate in 2024. Like I said, all those guys were injured for various parts of the year. You have a healthy Nico Collins coming back. They add Fantasy Oatmeal and Christian Kirk to the middle of the field, who I think can move the chains and be a fun. Like, he's a huge upgrade from like John Mechie, who was playing starting reps for them last year. And then Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, the 2 Iowa State receivers in the draft. So you still have Mixon. You add a pass catching back and Woody Marks, who's going to help CJ Stroud too. If the protection improves, and that's the big if right now, I think, because the O-line could really still be bad again. I feel pretty good about the passing floor and the ceiling that CJ Stroud has. We were taking this guy in like the 5th round last year. And I'm not saying that was correct because it probably wasn't. But if we were drafting him in like the 5th round and now he's available 133, like we're talking about a guy that probably still has the exact same ceiling he had before, except now you're getting him with the 13th round pick.
Yeah. I think we have less confidence on the offensive line. I think we have more pause in terms of CJ Stroud. Like it was the Jayden Daniels factor I mentioned earlier, where like after year 1, it's like he can only get better after year 2. It's like now that we have the year 2 where he kind of declined, it's like almost feels like the post-type bounce back here.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Like, he's in this range for me. It's just I do prefer specifically Brock Purdy because we've seen even higher end production.
Yep.
I trust Kyle Shanahan more, and I actually do think, Nico Collins is the best overall weapon. But even despite losing Debo and despite potentially being on the mend with Brandon Ayuk right away with the ACL injury, Kittle, McCaffrey, even the 2 young players, I have more confidence in that plus Shanahan than I do the insulation with the Houston situation. So again, that was the only real pause I have with Stroud specifically in relation to Purdy, but I don't think anything you said is wrong. And in fact, by the way, that's Brampton Bulldog former player John Mechie.
There you go.
Former GOAT. Shout out the Canadian again. But I don't think you're wrong at all. And in fact, I would argue that with the injection of youth, instead of having an older Diggs, instead of having we ended up seeing what happened with Dell, but I would argue that Dell compared to like Jalen Knoll, I think Jalen Knoll is an even better prospect.
Yeah. I mean, here's my thing with quarterback. I saw Dwayne McFarland, I think, was the one who tweeted this out. Year over year, in terms of correlation to previous year's fantasy production, the lowest of all the positions is quarterback. Quarterback has the most turnover as far as like who the top 6 guys are, who the top 12 guys are. The guys who run, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, those guys sticky year over year. But the guys who don't run, Stroud, Love, Dak, Baker, Mahomes, those type of guys, I mean, it's not like they don't run, but they're not like Hurts or Jackson or whatever. They fluctuate year over year. It's usually who had the better pass catchers that year, who stayed healthy, whose offense stayed healthy, that kind of stuff. So when I look at who's getting the hype, like you think of like a Baker or Mahomes going like way higher, like 7th, 6th round potentially in ADP, there's not any real difference between them and like CJ Stroud, who's going, way, way later, who just a calendar year before was going where they're going.
Well, the factor is recency bias because we see Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes, sorry. Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow give you the 22.5, CJ Stroud a lot less than that. When in actuality, you realize that all of these pocket quarterbacks probably have a similar range in general. Like maybe it's 15 and a half, 16 points per game, upwards of 23 points per game. It's just depending on where they finish and fluctuate between that range is how we value them based on the previous year. So for example, I mean, like CJ Stroud, top 7 in points per game first year. Last year declines. Dak Prescott is going off the board like quarterback 16 or 17 after the year prior literally being the quarterback 4 in points per game. Like
same with Jordan Love.
Nothing changed in the talent level of these guys.
No, and last year I could have said the same thing. Oh, CJ Stroud at quarterback 5, quarterback 6. I don't see a huge difference between him and Baker Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield has the great season.
Not only did you not see a big difference, Baker Mayfield crushed them.
Yeah, exactly. Just year over year, who has the healthy weapons group? And like, if you just look at a pocket quarterback and you're like, there's like pocket quarterbacks in the 14th round that I think have good weapons. Like Tua didn't even make this list. Has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and all
Matt
those guys.
Stafford.
Like Justin Fields.
Herbert.
Justin Fields was the guy that would have just missed for me, and he's a rushing quarterback. So like you get the obviously the ceiling that if he has a nice season, he could be like a 22 point per game scorer. There was last time he was a starting quarterback, we drafted him like quarterback 4 or 5 off the board.
Yeah, no, exactly. I agree with you there. Overall, though, these are our top 15 quarterbacks. Again, the honorable mentions we said Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, the immediate guys off this list. You go a little deeper, maybe you see, a Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, Matthew Stafford. But overall, man, like all this told me is unless you're drafting a quarterback
punt. Just punt.
Yeah,
like punt the quarterback position. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say top 4 or punt.
Yeah, exactly. And even top 4, like I kind of want a discount on them. And like maybe in home leagues, like you and I saw in the Flock League last year that like Burrow fell to like the 7th round. It's like when that happens, obviously take the elite passing projection. But dude, like don't take the first falling quarterback value. That would be my advice to people drafting right now. If you guys want to take
He can speak from experience, by the way.
Yeah, I took Anthony Richardson in my home league last year, who was the first value that I found off the board. I could have taken Jayden Daniels in the 9th round, who fell 2 rounds past where I had him ranked, and it would have been a much better pick, and I didn't have to pass on great receiver projections to do it. My strategy this year will 100% be, once I'm deciding between Rashad Bateman and Jaden Higgins and those type of wide receivers, and then like Tajay Spears and those type of running backs, that's when I'll take my quarterback. Because why would I take Baker Mayfield or Patrick Mahomes? And I like those guys. I like their projections. When like I'm taking them over, Devontae Smith or something. And like there's no reason to do that when I can get a guy who projects similarly in CJ Stroud or Jordan Love over like bum ass backup wide receivers and running backs.
And obviously you're accepting more risk when you wait on the quarterback position, but I mean, just talk about the reward in terms of opportunity bundle. I mean, I'm going to throw this name obviously because it's my guy and it's on my mind, but like I said, Dak had 20.7 points per game 2 years ago, right? So you mean to tell me, what would you rather have? Dak plus a 3rd round running back or receiver, and Dak gives you 20 points per game, or Josh Allen and his 26 points per game plus a 10th or 11th round running back or receiver?
Yeah, and even with Josh Allen giving you 26 points per game, which would be objectively a monster year, you might still end up netting positive with a 17 point per game running back versus the 8 point per game, 10 point per game running back that you'll get in round 11. So that's the strategy behind it. I mean, late round quarterback, we're not breaking any news to anybody right now, but especially this year, it makes so much sense. So if you want to take this advice into action, quarterback's really important on Underdog because you can't stream. You got to hit on the right ones possibly and, stack up your quarterbacks and all that stuff. Head on over to the link in the pinned comment. Sign up on Underdog. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. You'll get up to $1,000 in bonus funds. There's no waivers. There's no trades. There's no anything. All you do is draft. You can have hundreds of fantasy teams if you want. Me and you certainly do every single year.
Yeah.
But there's also contests for every single budget as well. If you want to enter $3 drafts, you can enter those. You want to enter drafts up to $500, $1,000, you can enter those as well. So if you're interested, check that out down below in the pinned comment. Make sure to let them know that we sent you using the promo code FSE. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed this video. Peace out. We'll talk to you soon.